votes.
Yes, Joan Lester, who's been campaigning in a dramatic way against Lawson, the
Only 2%
editor of The
swing
Spectator.
there.
Well, let's take the figure whilst we've got... I believe we've actually got the figure. Keith Joseph has held on to Leicester North East, which will surprise no one, but let's take a look at Joan Lester's figures, if we may. Is it possible? No, it's not. All right, let's take a quick...
Let's take Keith Joseph at Leeds East. Sorry.
Yeah, Leeds East. All right, let's take a quick look at the Lancaster result, which was a Conservative gain. Here it is, Lancaster, and that's Mrs. Keller. As I was saying, the Queen is the Duke of Lancaster.
A 4.8% swing to the Conservatives there, and a lost Liberal deposit.
Yes, this is Stanley Hennig, a man on the right wing of the Labour Party, very pro-common market, out of the House.
I'm driven along by lights, it would surprise you to know, and I've got none on, but here is a Conservative gain at Rochester and Chatham, and that means that Mrs. Ann Kerr is out.
Yes, indeed. That is indeed a remarkable result. A very influential and effective campaigner again, but it doesn't hold against a swing of this kind. It's no good.
No, it doesn't. Can we have a quick comment about Mrs. Kerr being out?
Well, I mean, I think this was quite inevitable. It was one of the ones one listed on the sort of swing we're having here, and there was some expectation of rather bigger swings in that area particularly. By the way, we missed the flash that Gordon Walker had held Leighton. And in the performance we've been having now, we thought the Conservatives might even pick that seat up, which they won in the by-election in '65.
And yet another husband and wife team broken up, and Conservative again, Bradford West.
Well, this was their best chance of a gain in Yorkshire, and I think they were bound to gain that after they gained Keighley.
This is John Wilkinson knocking out Normal Hazeltine, who was Parliamentary Private Secretary to Roy Mason.
And they've gained Billericay, and Conservatives have gained Billericay, or rather, what they've done is got it back, haven't they? Because that's gone back and forth. But Billericay. Let's go upstairs to Robin Day and the comparative quiet. Robin.
And up here I've got with me Sir Edward Boyle, shortly to go to the House of Lords. But I'm going to ask him to say something about a man whom practically every newspaper in the last 3 weeks has said is a lousy campaigner and not a very good leader, whatever other qualities he may be, Mr. Edward Heath.
Well, thank you, Robin, because I think it's high time that tribute was paid tonight to Ted Heath for the way he's conducted this campaign. He's absolutely firmly, from the very beginning, stuck to his view that what this country needs is a reformed free enterprise system, and we need it not just for its own sake, but for the sake of a better life that this will bring. He's stuck to this theme throughout the campaign, and it has paid off in the end. And I think this is one of the finest performances by a leader at any election during the century, and I'm very glad to pay the first tribute to him tonight.
Of course, it's if one remembers the elections of Campbell Bannerman and Attlee, which were landslides, they also were led, curiously enough, by leaders who weren't flamboyant in the conventional sense, weren't they?
That's perfectly true. Not that you and I quite remember Campbell Bannerman's campaign.
No.
But when you think the criticisms that have been made of Ted Heath this last week or two in the press, what we've read about this campaign, I must say I have tremendously admired the way he has stuck to his theme. I think the opinion was considerably influenced by the trade figures the last few days.
I want to ask you about what Mr. Short said. You heard him a moment ago saying that if Labour was to lose, it was because of the devaluation scare and stunt, as he called it, of the last few days.
I absolutely disagree with that. I consider that Ted Heath has put before the country a positive theme throughout this election, and he's stuck to it. He only mentioned the risk of devaluation, as you say, once. He's stuck to this theme, and I think it was the trade figures the last few days that made a lot more people ask themselves whether what Mr. Heath has been saying isn't right after all. He's stuck to the theme about prices, about unemployment, all those things.
Would you just watch Birmingham's Selly Oak, which is coming up now, I think? Shortly on the results, yes. Edward, you know about Birmingham.
I, Stanley Blyer, the undersigned, being the acting returning officer for the constituency above mentioned, Selly Oak, constituency of Birmingham, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Gurdon Harold Edwards,
Conservative,
18281. Hartley Brewer Michael John, 16758. Majority of 1,523 for Gurdon, and that the undermentioned person has been duly elected to serve as member for the said constituency, Harold Edward Gurdon. Thank you.
Now, that was an increased majority, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yes. What do you think of that result?
I think it was a good result because Selly Oak is not the sort of seat in Birmingham that is getting easier for the Conservatives. Of course, the Liberals stood last time, but I think Harold Gurdon will be well satisfied with this result.
coming back to what we were discussing a moment ago, you, of course, left politics now. Now that you see the probability of a Conservative government, are you a little sorry that you're not going to hold high office, perhaps as Home Secretary or something like that?
Well, Robin, so far as I was concerned, I was offered the possibility of being Vice-Chancellor of Leeds. I'm sorry to leave the House of Commons. I'm sorry to leave my colleagues in the party, but I still think being Vice-Chancellor of a big civic university is a fascinating job to look forward to.
Now, would you care to speculate, now that you're out of the battle, who is going to be Mr. Heath's Foreign Secretary, do you think?
I would very much expect that Sir Alec Douglas-Home...
And Chancellor of the Exchequer?
I would expect Mr. MacLeod. And if Mr. MacLeod is Foreign Secretary, then I very much hope Mr. Maudling will play a very prominent part, indeed, in the government, as chairman of some all-important cabinet committees.
And what about Quentin Hogg, Home Secretary or Lord Chancellor?
Well, I would think quite possibly Lord Chancellor. And if he were to be Lord Chancellor, of course, I think Mr. Maudling would make a superb Home Secretary.
Now, with your knowledge of the Midlands and so on, do you think, and of your great knowledge of the Tory party, do you think that powerlism, to use that well-known but slightly confusing phrase, that powerlism will be more of a force in the Tory party with the Tory party in government or with the Tory party in opposition?
Well, I've just no doubt that on those important points of policy on which Mr. Heath disagrees with Mr. Powell, there will be no change whatever in the policy Mr. Heath has put before the electors.
Common market, immigration.
That's right. One crucial point about immigration, Robin, Mr. Heath has said over and over again firmly, there will be no harassment of those who are members in this country. I've always found, talking to immigrants in my own constituency, this fear of repatriation was the great thing, and there will be no truck at all with organised repatriation.
Now, may I talk to the gentleman who is sitting next to you, who was the victor of the first result announced tonight, Mr. Howell from Guildford. Are you surprised at this result? Because as I was saying to Mr. Short earlier, without expressing any political view, it doesn't really seem altogether surprising or sensational that 5 or 6 people in 100 should have changed their view after all the admitted difficulties the government has had.
Well, I think it was a question of one's own judgment versus what the polls were telling us. And all along the polls said it can't be, and all along our judgment said it can be, and it is.
Did you ever have any doubt?
Of course, we're only human at times. One has doubts, particularly when these poll figures flutter down like autumn leaves. But the more confused they got, the more confident we got.
I like that remark, we're only human at times.
Well, we're only human all the time. I'll concede that one.
And what do you think now is going to be the priority of a Conservative administration, if there is one? And although Robert Mackenzie said almost certainly just a moment ago, no one has predicted a Labour government yet.
Well, I think the Conservative policies and programmes that Ted Heath has set out again and again... And
don't set them out again
no,
tonight.
I won't set them out now, but I would just say that this vote tonight, the way it's going, a vote not merely against the Wilson style of government, but I think very much for Ted Heath and his whole approach. He has set out these policies again and again, and he's made quite clear what the priorities are. He's called them his new style of government, and that's what he's going to set about the moment his victory is confirmed.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Clip?
We'll keep our eye on Ipswich, where Dingle Foot is having a recount, and almost a 7,000 majority up there, but we're going to Devon North now, and David Lomax. David.
We're waiting here in the Queen's Hall, Barnstaple, for the North Devon result and the fate of Jeremy Thorpe, the leader of the Liberal Party. And here is the High Sheriff of Devon, Lieutenant Colonel Incledon Webber, with the result.
Is this on? I, Godfrey Sturdy, Incledon Webber, being the returning officer for the North Devon constituency, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Timothy Carlton Kegwin.
Conservative.
18,524. Barry Gray Morris.
Democrat.
175. Christopher John Mullin.
Labour.
5,268. John Jeremy Thorpe.
Liberal.
18,893.
So Jeremy Thorpe holds Devon North.
And that John Jeremy Thorpe has been duly elected to serve as member for the North Devon constituency.
Mr. High Sheriff and Returning Officer, it falls to me as the successful candidate to move a vote of thanks to you and to your staff for the excellent way in which they have conducted this election, for the efficiency with which the clerks have managed our affairs in the polling booths today, those who have counted this evening, and I would like, on a subsequent occasion,
well, we suddenly lost Jeremy Thorpe, but nevertheless there was a Labour gain.
Labour gained Oldham West, which is just regaining the seat that they lost in the by-election. Jeremy Thorpe back in by 300, obviously must be enormous comfort to the Liberals. And here's a Conservative gain in Bolton West. That was a seat that was on the margin, but on the swing we've been having now, it's just about one of the ones that one would expect to go.
And they also gained Preston North whilst we were watching other things. That was Julian Amery's seat, you will remember, which he lost. Now let's take a quick look at the Devon North figures. Here they are. Jeremy Thorpe's seat. His father and his grandfather, both Conservative members of Parliament. Here he is, the leader of the Liberal Party.
An 85% turnout, the highest turnout we've had anywhere, and he won by squeezing the Labour vote. The Tory vote went up by 3%, but his vote went up more because of the Labour vote went down.
And we're going now. I believe that Mr. Wilson is arriving at Huyton. Let's go to Huyton now. I think he really is arriving. Well, you can tell
in the pitch
that.
dark, you wouldn't recognize the fact that he was arriving, but he is just about to turn up here. He's come from the Adelphi Hotel, where he stayed about an hour longer than was expected, watching television results, of course. But he has to come here by 1 o'clock, when we expected the result to be announced here in the Territorial Army Hall at Huyton. There's a small crowd, mainly of children who've been out there all day, waiting for the arrival of his car. Inside, all the other candidates are also here waiting. The counting is virtually finished, the last check being made. And here, with its outrider escort, the Prime Minister's car. The escort rather far ahead of the Prime Minister. He has, of course, the full trappings of Prime Minister up here wherever he's been. In the hall here, he has scrambler telephones, hotlines, and all the other communications that he needs. Special branch men go with him wherever he is. The police have been both here and in Liverpool at the hotel all day long. We were reliably told he was about to drive up to this entrance to the hall, but there's no sign of him for just the moment. The atmosphere here at Huyton has been, among Labour supporters, rather gloomy with the results that have been coming in, but the people here have been mainly party workers, because with the Prime Minister has been the entire entourage that he's had with him during the election. And those people will presumably arrive here at the hall. We expect the Prime Minister and his wife, and Will Camp, of course, who's been his public relations officer throughout this campaign. The constituency here, it'll be interesting to see what result the Prime Minister gets. He had a majority of 20,000 at the last election in '66, but the size of the constituency has risen since then, and he'll need about 48,000 votes to hold his majority at the same proportion as it was at the last election. Huyton has seen the Prime Minister on and off, mainly in these walkabouts that he's been doing, and he did spend the whole of today, with the exception of 4 hours in the afternoon when he went back to the hotel and rested, in very gay spirit.